Confluence is a great tool for creating and collaborating on a bunch of content really quickly. Like, it's super easy to create a page in Confluence, add a bunch of stuff, and stash it away in a space somewhere. But this can tend to get a little bit messy over time as you fill a bunch of spaces with pages that aren't interconnected with each other. Hi, I'm Matt with K15T, and I want to talk about using simple yet powerful labels in Confluence to create a rich set of interconnected content that can power your organization and improve the way you collaborate together. I'll talk a little bit about the use cases that are enabled when you have great labels added to your content. I'll talk a bit about creating a labeling system so anybody in your organization can add the right labels at the right time. And finally, I'll talk about empowering teammates to edit and add labels properly so your content only gets better over time. With labels, your team can create all sorts of cool connections and structures in Confluence. And you might be thinking, yeah, but we're already using spaces to organize our content. Isn't that enough? Well, yes and no. With labels, you can add small little bits of information to pages all over your Confluence instance and interconnect those so people can discover useful content even faster. So if you imagine each Confluence space as separate bulletin boards with content on them, labels are the interconnecting strings between each of those that allow you to bring all your content together in really cool and powerful ways. And here are some of those. Most likely, all of your pages are already within spaces and structured well within the space hierarchy. But then across the space or across all of your spaces, you might have pages that are related to each other. So for example, this purchasing page is just one of the many pages related to operations within my company. So I want to make a list of all of those really quickly. I can use the content by label macro to very quickly create that. So here I can enter the operations label, and I can even add some other options. So maybe, for example, I want to limit the results that are displayed in this list, or maybe I want to show the excerpt of all of these pages. Quick tip, always add the excerpt macro to pages. It makes really cool stuff like this. Now I can really quickly and automatically generate a list of all operations related pages and display the excerpts for each of those. You may want people to be able to search for a specific type of content or a specific label. So for example, I want people to be able to find all of the event-related pages in my whole Confluence space. So I can use the live search macro here and restrict it to the current space I'm on, and then specifically filter only for those pages that are labeled event. Now, whenever somebody uses this search box on my event page, it's only going to return those pages with the event label. Beyond just Confluence pages, maybe you want people to be able to find other useful resources that you have stashed away somewhere in your Confluence instance. So for example, this page has all of our branding resources. Yes, the page does have the communication label on it, but maybe I want people to be able to find all of these resources when they search for that label. So if you go into the attachments area on the page, you can apply labels directly to the attachments themselves. So now if someone searches for this label, if they use a macro that displays things with this label, not only will they see pages about communication, they'll also see these attachments as well. To make labels work really well in Confluence, you need to be adding them consistently to your pages, attachments, and even spaces. This is pretty simple for teammates to do because it's a free-form field where they can enter the content for the label, but it can get a bit messy over time if you don't have a system in place where you've agreed upon the labels you're going to use and where you're going to use them. Here are some tips we found work well at K15T for creating great labels. One is use abbreviations or prefixes. So maybe KB for knowledge base articles, or maybe you use an acronym for one of your product names. Also, stick with singular words. They're just easier to read. So don't use products, use product. And speaking of easier to read, also try to stick with a singular word if at all possible. If not, you can use something like a dash or an underscore to separate words so they still read well. And then finally, use analytics to figure out which things people are searching for. If you're using Confluence Cloud Premium or Confluence Cloud Enterprise, head over there to see the common keywords people are looking for. To improve your label game over time, you'll want to appoint one or more people who will keep an eye on how labels are being used to ensure they're being used correctly. As we mentioned in a past video, you might have people who are your wiki gardeners. These folks are already keeping an eye on your content in Confluence, so they're perfect to keep an eye on the labels as well. Now, you want to empower them to make sure they're going to be successful in keeping track of all the labels, so here are some tips we found work well at K15T for doing this. First off, you might just want to list all the labels that are used in Confluence. And to do this, you can use the label list macro. This is really great for getting a holistic view of all the labels in alphabetical order. And you can restrict this if you're just keeping an eye on the labels for a specific space. You can also exclude certain labels, so maybe you're trying to just keep an eye on those labels that shouldn't be used, but you have your approved list of labels that are A-OK. You could put those A-OK labels here, and then find those ones where maybe teammates have gone astray and added the label they shouldn't have. Also, you might want to just see which labels are popular, the ones that people are using the most. So here I can use the popular labels macro. So this shows all the popular ones with the most popular label on top. Again, I can restrict this per space, and here I can also view this as a heat map just to get a nicer look at the data. Both of these macros will enable your teammates to keep an eye on how labels are being used to make sure they make sense with your labeling system and the way you're creating cool interconnections in Confluence. So, labels are a small but mighty part of Confluence that your team can use to connect all sorts of related content throughout Confluence. You can do some amazing things with labels, and you can do that by keeping naming simple and consistent and giving your teams the powerful tools they need to make sure labels are used well over time. We've used labels at K15T to create all sorts of cool interconnections, and we want to see you do the same thing too. So which of these best practices do you want to try? Are you going to go create some really great new labels that you can use across Confluence? Or are you going to use these macros to check out the labels you're already using and improve those right now? Let us know in the comments below. Also, this is just one of the many cool things you can do in Confluence. So subscribe and share this video with friends who are looking to make all sorts of cool connections in Confluence. And join us for another one as we continue to explore how to use Confluence to share what you do best.